I anxiously adjusted my tie one last time before stepping out of our car. This dinner with my wife Amanda's wealthy family meant everything to me. After 2 years of marriage, I was desperate to finally gain their acceptance. The expensive crystal vase I had purchased cost nearly half my monthly salary, but I hoped it would finally impress her father Thomas. Despite the cold reception at previous gatherings, Amanda promised tonight would be different. I allowed myself to believe her. After all, how bad could a family anniversary dinner really be? Before I continue this painful memory, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if you have ever felt like an outsider in your own family. Trust me, you will want to see how I finally stood up for myself. Amanda and I met at a local coffee shop where I worked part-time while finishing my nursing degree. She came in every morning for her latte, always dressed impeccably in designer clothes that I later learned cost more than my monthly rent. Despite our obvious differences, we connected instantly. She was attracted to what she called my authenticity and work ethic, while I was drawn to her confidence and ambitious nature. What I failed to recognize were the subtle warning signs during our dating phase. Whenever we met her friends from her world, she would introduce me as a nursing student, never mentioning my background or family. At restaurants, she would quietly correct my table manners or redirect conversations when topics veered toward my upbringing in a small Midwestern town. But love has a way of blinding you to reality. Our wedding was small, mostly my family and friends. From her side, only her younger sister Sophia attended, claiming everyone else had conflicts. I chose to believe this explanation rather than face the truth that they simply did not approve of me. Over the 2 years of our marriage, we had attended numerous family functions where I was tolerated but never truly included. Thomas would talk investments with James, Amanda's brother, while offering me only passing acknowledgement. Her mother, Elaine, would kiss my cheek, but somehow make it feel like an obligation rather than affection. This dinner was different, though. It celebrated Thomas and Elaine's 40th wedding anniversary, a milestone Amanda insisted required our presence. For weeks I prepared meticulously. I spent half my monthly salary on a tailored navy suit that Amanda approved. I researched wines extensively so I could engage with Thomas, a self-proclaimed wine connoisseur. I practiced conversation topics that Amanda suggested would impress her father, memorizing stock market trends and real estate values in their neighborhood. The crystal vase was wrapped perfectly in silver paper, with a blue bow chosen specifically to match the family crest colors. Amanda had spent hours coaching me on proper etiquette topics to avoid, and even how to properly compliment her mother on the recent renovation of their summer home. I had practiced my posture, my handshake, and even rehearsed anecdotes that would showcase my intelligence without threatening Thomas's authority. I was determined to finally break through the invisible barrier between me and acceptance. When we pulled up to the sprawling mansion, my confidence wavered. The circular driveway was filled with luxury vehicles that probably cost more than I would make in 5 years as a nurse. The stone facade of the 3-story house was illuminated by professional landscape lighting, making it look like something from a magazine rather than a family home. A uniformed staff member opened our car door before I could even turn off the engine. Thomas greeted us at the door, crystal tumbler of amber liquid in hand. He gave Amanda the customary kiss on both cheeks before offering me a firm handshake that felt more like a power move than a welcome. "Ivan," he nodded curtly, "Amanda tells me you have been busy at the hospital. Lots of bedpans, I imagine." He chuckled at his own joke as Amanda laughed nervously beside me. "Actually, sir, I work in the cardiac care unit. We just implemented a new protocol for post-operative care that has reduced recovery time by nearly 20%. I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Fascinating," Thomas replied, without a hint of actual interest, before turning to guide Amanda inside. "Darling, your mother has been asking about you. James and Sophia are already here with their spouses." I followed them into the grand foyer where Elaine stood, speaking with Amanda's siblings. Sophia, the youngest at 28, gave me a quick hug that felt genuine. Her husband Michael nodded politely. James, always his father's son, merely raised his glass in acknowledgement before continuing his conversation with his wife Natalie about their recent trip to Tuscany. "Ivan, dear," Elaine kissed near my cheek. "That tie is certainly colorful." Her tone made it clear this was not a compliment. "Thank you, ma'am. Amanda helped me choose it," I replied, hoping to diffuse any criticism by associating the choice with her daughter. "Did she? How surprising." Elaine raised an eyebrow toward Amanda, who was already moving away to join her sister. As the evening progressed, I noticed how Amanda transformed in her family's presence. Her laugh became higher pitched, her gestures more refined, and she seamlessly slipped into conversations about people and places I had never heard of. She rarely glanced my way, as though afraid I might say or do something embarrassing. When Thomas invited the men to his study for drinks before dinner, I followed dutifully, gift in hand. The wood-paneled room with its leather chairs and wall of books was clearly a sanctuary of masculine privilege. James immediately claimed the chair closest to Thomas, launching into a discussion about a potential investment opportunity. Michael, Sophia's husband, joined in with insights about market predictions. I stood awkwardly, waiting for an appropriate moment to present my gift or join the conversation. So Ivan James finally acknowledged me, swirling his expensive scotch. "Amanda mentioned you are working at General Hospital now. Must be quite a change from the coffee shop." His smirk was barely disguised behind his crystal tumbler. "Yes, I completed my degree with honors and specialized in cardiac care. I was actually selected for the advanced training program," I replied, trying to infuse my voice with quiet confidence rather than defensiveness. "Nursing is certainly a noble profession," Thomas interjected, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Always good to have people willing to do the essential work." As I opened my mouth to respond, I overheard James mutter to Thomas still, "Cannot believe Amanda married someone who takes orders from doctors instead of giving them." Thomas's subtle nod of agreement was like a knife twisting in my gut. I excused myself to use the restroom, needing a moment to compose myself. In the hallway, I could hear Amanda laughing with the women in the living room, seemingly unaware or unconcerned about my discomfort. When the dinner bell rang, we all gathered in the formal dining room. Crystal chandeliers hung over an immaculately set table that could comfortably seat 16. Fine china, multiple wine glasses, and more silverware than I had ever seen at one place setting adorned the crisp, white tablecloth. "Now for the seating arrangements," Elaine announced, gesturing around the table. "Thomas and I will be at the heads, of course. James and Natalie, you will be to Thomas's right. Sophia and Michael to my right. Amanda, darling, you will sit to your father's left so he can discuss the foundation gala with you." I waited, expecting to hear my name next. The silence stretched uncomfortably as everyone began moving toward their assigned seats. And Ivan Elaine finally continued with a dismissive wave toward the corner of the room. "We thought you might be more comfortable at the children's table. The adults will be discussing rather complex business matters after all." My gaze followed her gesture to a plastic folding table set up in the corner where 4 children, under the age of 12, sat with paper plates and plastic cups. The contrast between their setup and the formal dining arrangement could not have been more stark. The room fell silent as everyone waited for my reaction. I looked to Amanda, hoping she would protest this blatant insult. Instead, she avoided my eyes, pretending to adjust her napkin as she took her assigned seat at the main table. "Amanda," I whispered, approaching her chair, "this is humiliating." She glanced around nervously before hissing, "Please do not make a scene. Just go along with it for tonight." The children's table was a rectangular plastic folding table covered with a thin, disposable tablecloth featuring cartoon characters. The chairs were equally flimsy, clearly designed for smaller bodies than mine. As I reluctantly took my seat, the 4 children stared at me with obvious confusion. The oldest, who I recognized as James's son, Tyler, was about 12. The others were younger cousins, whose names I had never properly learned. "Are you in trouble?" the youngest girl asked innocently, her missing front tooth making her lisp slightly. "My daddy sits me at the little table when I am in trouble." "No, sweetie," I replied, trying to keep my voice light. "Your grandma just thought I should sit here." "But you are a grown-up," she insisted, her brow furrowed in genuine confusion. While the adults were served on fine-boned china with sterling silver utensils, our table received paper plates and plastic forks. I watched as servers presented the main table with elegant portions of seared scallops and microgreens. Our table received chicken fingers and French fries served unceremoniously by a kitchen assistant rather than the uniformed servers attending the main table. From my humiliating vantage point, I could hear snippets of sophisticated conversation about investment portfolios, the upcoming season at the opera, and plans for winter holidays in the Swiss Alps. Occasionally, I would catch Amanda's eye, but she would quickly look away, laughing too loudly at something James said or nodding intently at her father's pronouncements. One of the younger children spilled his juice, and I quickly helped clean it up with napkins before it could stain his clothes. The server who came to assist gave me a pitying look that burned more than any outright insult could have. "Why are you sitting with us?" Tyler finally asked directly, his 12-year-old face serious beyond his years. "You are my aunt, Amanda's husband." "Right. Should not you be sitting with the adults?" "That is a good question, Tyler," I replied, my voice low enough that only our table could hear. "Sometimes adults have strange ideas about who belongs where. Grandma and Grandpa do that a lot." Tyler nodded sagely. "They put people in boxes. Dad says I am going to sit at the kids' table until I am old enough to talk about stocks and real estate." He rolled his eyes in a way that reminded me so much of his father, yet with a self-awareness James seemed to lack. When I excused myself to use the restroom, I took a deliberate path that led past the kitchen. The door was slightly ajar, and I could clearly hear Thomas's booming voice from inside, where he was presumably selecting wine with James. "Amanda will eventually come to her senses and find someone more suitable," Thomas said confidently. "This nursing phase of his is charming in theory, but he will never truly fit into our world." "I give it another year," James replied. "Once she starts thinking about children, she will want someone who can provide the kind of life she grew up with." Exactly came Elaine's voice, apparently joining them in the kitchen. It was acceptable when she was in her rebellious phase, but a man should elevate a woman's position, not require her to lower herself. Then, most painfully, I heard Amanda's light laughter joining theirs. Though she did not speak, her complicit silence and amused response cut deeper than any words could have. I returned to the children's table with newfound clarity, sitting down heavily in the flimsy chair that creaked under my weight. Tyler must have noticed something in my expression, because he scooted his chair closer to mine. "They talk about me that way too," he confided quietly. "I heard Grandma tell my dad I was too sensitive and creative to be a real Barnes man." I looked at this perceptive child with new eyes. "And what do you think about that?" He shrugged, pushing his French fries around his plate. "I think they do not know me very well, and maybe they do not want to." "That is pretty wise for someone your age, Tyler." He gave me a half smile. "Mom says I am an old soul. Dad just wishes I liked sports more." He glanced over at the adults' table, then back at me. "You know, my dad always says respect has to be earned, but I think respect should be given until someone proves they do not deserve it." "That is exactly right." I nodded, surprised by his insight. Tyler glanced around conspiratorially before pulling a crystal wine glass from beneath the table. Somehow he had managed to snag one of the fine glasses and had it filled with what I recognized as Thomas's expensive Bordeaux. "I thought you might want some of the good stuff," he whispered, sliding it to me. "No one should have to drink apple juice when everyone else gets wine." This small act of rebellion and solidarity from a 12-year-old hit me hard. While Amanda, my wife and partner, sat allowing her family to humiliate me, this child had more courage and compassion. The final straw came when James stood to propose a toast. Everyone at the main table raised their crystal glasses, while we at the children's table held our plastic cups of juice. "To 40 amazing years," James began, looking at his parents. "And to family, true family, those who understand what it means to be a Barnes, and those who truly belong in this circle." As he emphasized the word belong, several pairs of eyes flicked meaningfully in my direction before the adults clinked glasses. Amanda raised her glass with the others, her face flushed with either wine or shame, but she made no move to defend me, or even acknowledge the pointed exclusion. "You do not have to stay where you are not respected," Tyler whispered, echoing my own thoughts with startling accuracy. In that moment something crystallized within me. This pattern would never change. I would always be the outsider, the charity case, the man not good enough for their precious daughter. And Amanda, for all her private assurances of love and support, would never stand against her family on my behalf. I carefully folded my paper napkin and placed it beside my barely touched plate of children's food. "Thank you for the conversation, Tyler," I said quietly. "And for the wine. I think you are going to grow up to be a much better man than many at that table." He nodded solemnly. "Are you leaving, yes? Some situations cannot be fixed by staying." I stood up, causing my chair to scrape slightly against the hardwood floor. A few heads turned in my direction, but most continued their animated conversation, not deigning to notice my movement. I walked calmly out of the dining room and retrieved my coat from the hallway closet. As I turned toward the front door, I caught Amanda's eye across the room. For a brief moment, I thought she might get up, might come after me, might finally choose me over her family's approval. Instead, she gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head before returning to her conversation with Sophia. I placed the expensively wrapped crystal vase on the entry table. The butler noticed, but said nothing, as I opened the front door myself and walked out into the cool evening air. The freedom I felt walking down that curved driveway toward my modest car was unexpected. My chest felt lighter with each step I took away from that toxic environment. As I drove away from the estate, my phone began vibrating in my pocket. I silenced it without looking, turned on the radio to a station. Thomas would hate, and headed toward an uncertain but suddenly more authentic future. I drove aimlessly through the city streetlights creating patterns across my windshield. After 30 minutes of random turns, I found myself in a neighborhood I did not recognize, modest, but clean, with small local businesses lining the main street. A neon sign reading Frank's Place caught my eye, its warm glow promising a refuge from both the physical and emotional chill of the evening. The bar was nothing like the sophisticated establishments Amanda preferred. No exposed brick walls or artisanal cocktail menus here, just worn wooden booths, a scarred bar top, and the comforting hum of casual conversation. I took a seat at the bar, loosening my tie and unbuttoning my collar for what felt like the first time all evening. "What can I get?" you asked the bartender. An older man with salt and pepper hair, and the kind of weathered face that suggested decades of listening to other people's troubles. "Whiskey. Nothing fancy." "Neat," I replied, my voice sounding raspy, even to my own ears. He poured a generous amount of amber liquid into a clean but simple glass. "Rough night," I laughed hollowly. "You could say that." Just came from a family dinner where I was seated at the kids' table while my wife sat with the adults. The bartender, who introduced himself as Frank, let out a low whistle. "That is cold." "What did you do?" "Left," I replied, simply taking a sip of the whiskey. It burned pleasantly, nothing like the aged Scotch Thomas had served, but somehow far more satisfying. "Good for you," Frank nodded approvingly. "Been tending bar for 40 years, and I have seen all kinds of family drama. Sometimes walking away is the only move that makes sense." As I nursed my drink, I finally checked my phone. 12 missed calls from Amanda. The text progressed from angry confusion to mounting concern. "Where are you? You are embarrassing me. Why would you just leave like that? My family is asking questions. This is so immature. Please come back." "Ivan, seriously, this is not funny. Are you okay? Please just let me know you are safe. I am worried now. Please call me back." Each message revealed more about her priorities than she probably intended. Her first concern had been her embarrassment, not my humiliation. Only after several hours did she even consider my well-being. As I scrolled through the messages, I was surprised to see a text from an unknown number. "This is Tyler. Aunt Amanda gave me your number to text you. Whatever you decide, I think you are cool." I smiled despite myself and turned off my phone. I ordered another drink and settled in for a conversation with Frank that proved more genuine than any interaction I had had all evening at the mansion. "My wife thought she could change her family's mind about me," I explained after recounting the full story. "Or maybe she thought she could change me enough that I would finally fit in. Either way, it was never going to work. People who love you do not try to make you smaller, Frank said, wiping down the bar top. That is what my late wife always said. 35 years we were married, and she never once asked me to be anything but myself. As the night grew later, the bar gradually emptied until I was the last customer. Frank shared stories of his own difficult in-laws, the compromises of his long marriage, and the wisdom that only comes from decades of navigating complicated relationships. "You know what you need. A night to clear your head," he finally said, checking his watch. "There is a decent hotel 2 blocks down. Nothing fancy but clean. Get some sleep, face. This fresh in the morning." Taking his advice, I checked into a modest hotel room around midnight. The contrast between this simple space and the luxury of Amanda's world was striking. The bedspread was slightly faded, the furniture functional rather than decorative, but it felt more honest somehow. Sitting at the small desk, I took out the hotel notepad and began writing down my thoughts and feelings, something I had never done before. The words flowed easily, as I documented not just tonight's humiliation, but the pattern of small compromises and quiet indignities I had accepted throughout our relationship. Around 1 in the morning, I called my mother, something I had not done often enough since marrying Amanda. Despite the hour, she answered immediately, her concern evident. "Ivan, are you okay?" I found myself telling her everything, all the things I had previously hidden to avoid worrying her or admitting my marriage was less than perfect. "Oh, honey," she sighed when I finished. "You cannot dim your light just to make others comfortable with their darkness. Your father and I raised you to be proud of who you are." Her simple validation brought unexpected tears to my eyes. We talked for nearly an hour, reconnecting in a way we had not done in years. As I finally lay down to sleep, a plan was forming in my mind, a path forward that preserved my dignity, whether Amanda chose to walk it with me or not. I slept surprisingly well, and woke to sunlight filtering through cheap curtains and the harsh reality of more than 30 missed calls and dozens of text messages. What caught my attention, however, was that many were not from Amanda, but from her family members, names that had never appeared on my phone before. Messages from James Sophia, even one from Thomas himself. The tone had shifted dramatically from the previous evening, though none contained actual apologies. The final voicemail from Amanda, left just 30 minutes ago, explained the sudden change. "Ivan, please call me back immediately. Grandfather Harold had a heart attack after dinner last night. He is at General Hospital, your hospital. The doctors say it is serious. We need you. He needs you. Please, Ivan." The irony was not lost on me. Harold Barnes was not just Amanda's grandfather, but a significant donor to the hospital where I worked. The cardiac care unit, where I was a respected nurse, was the same one where he would have been admitted. Now the family that had belittled my profession suddenly needed my expertise and connections. I sat on the edge of the bed, weighing my professional ethics against my personal hurt. Despite everything, I could not ignore a patient in need, especially one connected to my wife. I called my supervisor at the hospital, careful not to violate any confidentiality protocols. "Morning, Dave. Sorry to bother you on your day off, but I am trying to check on a patient who might have been admitted last night." Harold Barnes. Dave confirmed that Harold had indeed been admitted with a serious cardiac event and was currently stable but critical. Without sharing details, he mentioned that the family had been particularly demanding and had asked repeatedly if I was available. "They specifically asked for you by name, man. Said you were family. I told them you were off duty but would be in tomorrow. Actually, I said, making my decision, I will be coming in soon. Not to work a shift, but I can consult on his case." I showered quickly, changed back into my dress shirt and slacks from the night before, and stopped by the hospital locker room to change into the spare set of scrubs I kept there. The familiar professional attire felt like armor as I rode the elevator up to the cardiac care floor. The scene in the waiting room stopped me in my tracks. Thomas and Elaine sat rigidly in the vinyl chairs, their designer clothes looking out of place against the institutional backdrop. James paced near the vending machines, while Sophia leaned against Michael's shoulder. And in the center of it all, Amanda stood looking simultaneously relieved and terrified as she spotted me stepping off the elevator. "Ivan." She rushed toward me, her eyes red from crying. "Thank God you are here. No one will tell us anything, and we know you can help us get answers." I kept my face neutral, professional. "I have spoken with the attending physician. I understand your grandfather had an episode after dinner." Thomas approached his hand, extended in a way that seemed almost supplicating, nothing like his usual dominant handshake. "Ivan, we appreciate you coming. Harold asked for you specifically when they were bringing him in. Said you were the best cardiac nurse at General." I blinked in surprise. I had met Harold only twice at family events, and he had barely acknowledged me. That he would know my professional reputation was unexpected. "I will speak with the team and see what I can find out," I replied evenly. "Harold is in good hands here. Dr. Patel is our best cardiologist. But can you get us in to see him?" Elaine pressed her usual composure, cracking. "They keep saying immediate family, only and only for 5 minutes each hour. Those are the protocols for the ICU," I explained. "They are in place for the patient's benefit. I cannot change them, but I can make sure the doctor updates you regularly." Using my hospital badge, I entered the restricted area and found Harold's room. Dr. Patel was just finishing his examination, and I conferred with him professionally, offering insights about the family that might help with Harold's care plan. Harold himself was awake, but groggy, an imposing man, even in a hospital gown with monitoring equipment surrounding him. "You came," he said simply when he noticed me. "Did not think you would after Elaine's stunt last night." I raised an eyebrow, surprised he knew about the dinner fiasco. "News travels fast. Tyler called me," he replied with a weak smile. "That boy notices everything. Said you were the only adult who talked to him like a person all night. Then you vanished. Did not take a genius to figure out what happened." I checked his monitors, making professional notations rather than responding directly. "You know your stuff," Harold observed. "Thomas always talks about you like you are playing at being a medical professional. But the doctor said you helped establish the protocol they are using for my care." "Just doing my job, sir." Harold reached out and grasped my wrist with surprising strength. "Get them to pull their heads out of their asses, will you? Life is too short for that nonsense." I could not help but smile slightly. "I will see what I can do." Returning to the waiting room, I provided the family with a detailed but accessible explanation of Harold's condition, treatment plan, and prognosis. As I spoke in confident professional terms, I could see a shift in their perception. Thomas nodded along, asking intelligent questions that I answered easily. James stopped his nervous pacing to listen. Elaine clutched her designer handbag but remained respectfully silent. When I had finished and answered their questions, Amanda asked if she could speak with me privately. We walked to the hospital cafeteria, the same one where I ate lunch, most workdays, a far cry from the fine dining establishments she preferred. "I am so sorry, Ivan." She began, tears welling in her eyes. "Last night was inexcusable. I should have said something, should have stood up for you." "Yes, you should have," I agreed calmly. "I was caught off guard," she continued, the excuses flowing easily. "Mother sprung that seating arrangement on me at the last minute. I did not know how to react without causing a scene." "The scene was already caused, Amanda. I was humiliated in front of your entire family, and you did nothing." She reached for my hand across the table, but I kept mine wrapped around my coffee cup. "I know, and I am truly sorry. It will never happen again, I promise. I will talk to them, make them understand that they need to respect you." I looked at her carefully, seeing the genuine regret in her eyes, but also the fundamental misunderstanding of the situation. "This is not just about last night, Amanda. This is about a pattern that has existed since we met. You have been trying to mold me into someone your family would accept, rather than expecting them to accept who I actually am." "That is not true," she protested weakly. "It is, and I think you know it." I took a deep breath. "I will not be where I am not valued, Amanda, not even for you." Her eyes widened. "What are you saying?" "I am saying you have a choice to make. Our marriage, our life together, or your family's approval. Because I will not continue to be the outsider in my own marriage. You cannot ask me to choose between my husband and my family, she whispered. I am not asking you to cut them off. I am asking you to stand with me to be a united front. If you cannot do that, then we have bigger problems than one bad dinner. The realization dawned on her face that I might actually leave, that this was not a temporary upset that would blow over with enough apologies and promises. I will fix this, Yvonne. I will make it right. We will see, I replied, standing up. I am going to check on your grandfather once more, then I am going home. Our home. You can decide what you want to do. I returned to Harold's room for a final check before leaving the hospital. To my surprise, Thomas was there sitting beside the bed looking uncharacteristically vulnerable. Ivan, he acknowledged me with a nod. The nurse said you arranged for the cardiology department head to oversee my father's care personally. Dr. Patel is the best, I replied professionally. Your father deserves top care. Harold, more alert, now fixed his son with a stern look. Tell him what you told me, Thomas. Thomas cleared his throat uncomfortably. I owe you an apology for last night and for other occasions. It was unacceptable. It was clearly difficult for him to say even these few words, but the fact that he said them at all was significant. The man saved my life while you were all busy making him feel small, Harold added bluntly. Maybe it is time to reconsider your priorities. I nodded, accepting the apology without elaborating. I will check in tomorrow during my shift. The night team is excellent, so he is in good hands. As I turned to leave, Thomas added, Amanda is devastated. She loves you very much. I know, I replied. But sometimes love is not enough without respect. Over the following weeks, Harold made a remarkable recovery, partly due to the specialized care protocol I had helped implement months earlier. During this time, I saw subtle but significant changes in how Amanda's family treated me. Thomas asked genuine questions about my work rather than making dismissive comments. Elaine invited us to dinner at their home and pointedly seated me beside her at the main table. James still maintained his air of superiority, but even he acknowledged my professional expertise regarding his father's care. Most importantly, Amanda began standing up to her family for the first time in our relationship. When Elaine made a subtle comment about my tie at a subsequent dinner, Amanda quickly countered, Actually, Mother Ivan has excellent taste. Much better than James, who is still wearing those boring striped ties from college. I also strengthened relationships outside the Barnes family sphere. I reconnected with my parents and siblings, introducing Amanda to family traditions I had previously downplayed. I maintained a friendship with young Tyler, occasionally taking him to science museums or basketball games where we would talk about books and ideas his father had little interest in. The most profound change, however, was in how I viewed myself. No longer seeking validation from people who had been determined to find me lacking, I set clear boundaries in all my relationships, including with Amanda. Our marriage entered a period of renegotiation, with honest conversations about expectations and values that we should have had before our wedding. 6 months after that disastrous anniversary dinner, we attended another family gathering, this time a small celebration of Harold's recovery. The dynamics were noticeably different. I was seated at the main table beside Amanda, who kept her hand firmly linked with mine throughout the meal. When Harold raised his glass for a toast, he looked directly at me. To Ivan, whose professional skill and personal integrity I have come to greatly admire. Some people earn respect through titles and bank accounts. Others earn it through character and conviction. I know which I value more now. The sincere words from the family patriarch carried weight. Thomas nodded in agreement, and even James raised his glass, without sarcasm. Across the table, Tyler gave me a knowing smile, our secret alliance still intact. That evening marked a true turning point, not because I had finally gained the family's approval, but because I no longer needed it. I had found peace in standing up for myself and being valued for who I actually was, rather than who someone else wanted me to be. As Amanda and I drove home that night, she squeezed my hand. Thank you for not giving up on us. I did not give up on us, I corrected gently. I just refused to give up on myself. The most valuable lesson I learned through this journey was that sometimes walking away is the only way to show others your true worth. It is not about dramatic gestures or ultimatums, but about quietly, firmly standing in your own value, even when others fail to see it. That self-respect eventually forces others to see you clearly, whether they choose to acknowledge it or not. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family pressure, especially within laws? I would love to hear about times you had to set boundaries to preserve your dignity. Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to support more stories about self-respect and maintaining your worth in challenging relationships. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember, you deserve a seat at the main table of your own life, and no one can assign you to the kids' table unless you allow it.